New Chargers coach Jim Harbaugh said that he was going to build an all-star coaching staff in Los Angeles, and we've really loved some of the moves that he's made so far, but the one thing we don't know is who the offensive coordinator is going to be.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 8 seasons, but this is our 6th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for always making us your first listen, and to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, we know that Greg Roman is going to be a part of the Chargers coaching staff, but we do not know if it's going to be as the offensive coordinator. One thing we do know is that Ryan Ficken is returning as the special teams coordinator, and I know we are all happy about that. And we're also going to get into our first mock draft Monday of the year.
Yeah, and it's surprising how much consensus there seems to be in this first mock draft tracker, seeing that most of everyone thinks the Chargers are going to take Brock Bowers, which we would both be behind. I think we both like that kind of pick. But I do need to tell you guys first that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. David, we've been kind of tracking how this Chargers coaching search has gone so far, and there's been a lot of kind of half reports and, this is what's expected to happen so far, but we've got at least a little bit more over the weekend. This was the big one from Aaron Wilson, who said basically that the Chargers are expected to hire Greg Roman, but in an unknown capacity, Jesse Minter as their defensive coordinator, Mike Devlin as their offensive line coach, and keep Ryan Ficken as their special teams coach. That was one of the highest things on our list. I mean, first it was going to be Jay Harbaugh potentially coming as special teams coordinator. Now he might be going to Seattle too, has been another report that's been out there. But I like a lot of it. It's just going to see kind of where everything shakes out and who ends up in what positions.
Yeah, there's been a lot of rumors swirling around about who is going to be a part of the staff. And now that's starting to come a little bit more into focus as far as where they're going to be, who they're going to keep. And, we were very excited about them keeping Ryan Ficken. I feel like he's earned his title on the staff. But
yeah, love Jesse Minter
too.
Loves Ryan Ficken. You know what I mean? Those are both home runs for us.
Just a great group of coaches, and I think a really good mix of experience at some good positions, and a guy who has really shown himself and acquitted himself really well in Jesse Minter being the defensive coordinator, coming from that kind of Baltimore Ravens cloth there, and a lot of that kind of influence is now shaping what the Chargers are going to be turning into.
Yeah, and now we know, too, we're going to get into Marcus Brady being the passing game coordinator, and we know that Greg Roman is going to be hired by the Chargers in some capacity. The problem is we don't know if he's going to be the offensive coordinator, because I think Greg Roman in the right role would be very exciting, right? And I think there's different, places you could put him while still having him be a major part of what this offense looks like without giving him the total reins of being the offensive coordinator and having, the full autonomy of what this offense is going to look like, even though I'm sure, Jim Harbaugh is going to want it a certain way and has ideas for what he wants this offense to look like. But the hard thing is we heard from Ian Rappaport saying the Chargers are expected to hire respected offensive mind Greg Roman for a prominent spot on the staff of Jim Harbaugh as he's heading there tomorrow. The two sides are working out details, right? Prominent role. Offensive coordinator is a prominent role, right? But why not say offensive coordinator? And then you also have Jeremy Fowler, who later on, while saying that Marcus Brady was going to be the passing game coordinator for the Chargers, said that it was because he didn't get the OC job that went to Greg Roman. So we're like, okay, that's a weird way to say Greg Roman's the new Chargers offensive coordinator, but then he immediately almost, edited that and said, presumably. So it could still be, David, that Greg Roman is the favorite. And I just think for me, okay, I would understand it. He's been Jim Harbaugh's offensive coordinator before. I think I would just rather have him in a different role.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously it's easy to see the connections between Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh. I mean, they've worked together at a couple of different staffs. And so the familiarity is there. And that's one of the first things you want to look at whenever you're talking about a new coach bringing in, some of his coaching and filling out his staff. That's just going to be a key component of that. And I understand why some people are probably a little bit uneasy about him being an offensive coordinator. Is you look at the passing stats, it's 16th in Football Outsiders DVOA in passing in 2022, 16th in 2021, 17th in 2020. And, it's the Ravens finished 28th in passing yards per game in 2022. So that's where kind of things went all downhill. But you look at the rushing numbers, and that's where his bread and butter really comes from. And this comes from Stephen Haglund here. His rushing offenses have finished in the top 5 in rush EPA per play 6 times while he's been an offensive coordinator, including 3 times where it's finished number 1. So his definite calling card is the running game. He knows how to do it. He's executed it at a high level at multiple different stops.
Yeah, and the thing is I don't think Greg Roman as OC is as bad as some people think it is, right? Because I think what you get out of it is you're going to get more from your offensive line. You're going to get more for your running game. Just in a vacuum, if I had told you, hey, I know a guy that can improve your running game and your offensive line, most people would sign up for that, right? Yeah. But you just don't want to take the step back in the passing game where, he had Lamar Jackson and he's had lesser quarterbacks than that most of his career. But then you also look at the rushing statistics are off the chart, right? I mean, Ravens from 2019 to 2022 ranked 2nd in success rate, 1st in EPA. You also have, when he was with the 49ers, they ranked 5th in rush success from 2012 to 2014. So everywhere he's gone, he's fixed it. So that's why it's okay, well, if I could get him as a run game coordinator / tight ends coach, if I get him as a run game coordinator / associate head coach and give him that prominent role and give him a bigger title because he's been an OC for 3 different NFL teams at this point, yes, I would gladly do that. Would I rather see him as a supplementary piece and have a more innovative thinker running the offense as a whole? Yes. But we haven't heard any requested interviews besides Marcus Brady, who we're going to talk about, right, for the offensive coordinator position. We know Greg Roman is going to be talking with the Chargers on Monday. As you guys hear this, it could be decided that he is the offensive coordinator. So I think there's pros and cons to it. And I think, you know what you're going to get in a certain aspect. Yeah. In the passing game, where the dropback success rate in his time in Baltimore, 18th, San Francisco, 15th, Bills, 28th. He has a better passer than all those guys. So that's kind of what makes it tough to know how that would look with the Chargers. But let's talk about Marcus Brady, because it was announced by Ian Rappaport and others, Jeremy Fowler included, that Marcus Brady is going to be the passing game coordinator. I know Jeremy Fowler and Aaron Wilson were the ones on that one that broke that one first. Interviewed for the Chargers OC position already. We already knew that was the Colts offensive coordinator for 2021 and then got fired 8 games into 2022. David, how are you feeling about this edition? This one's kind of tougher to judge.
It is, but I think I go back a little bit further than that with Marcus Brady. I think in 2018, while serving as the assistant quarterbacks coach, he helped Andrew Luck, win the the Comeback Player of the Year award, which, is a fantastic award.
39 touchdowns, 15 picks. That was pretty good.
After all the injuries that he had to, overcome and be able to come back and really come back in that form, I think it is definitely something special. And then, of course, he was the QB coach for Phillip Rivers in his last season in the NFL. And, of course, that's when Phillip Rivers took the Colts to the playoffs. So he definitely has had, his hand in some of the success in some of the passing offenses, that he's been a part of. So I think it's definitely something that I want to see unfold. But I can understand why, you'd want to bring him onto the staff.
Yeah, I totally see why they'd want to bring him on. He was a guy who was a hot shot, up-and-coming coach because when he became the offensive coordinator under Frank Reich in Indianapolis. The hard thing is that Frank Reich was calling the plays up until when Marcus Brady ended up getting fired. He was, Marcus Brady last year had basically an analyst role with the Eagles, basically, right? But when he was with the Colts, he got fired halfway through the 2022 season. As soon as Matt Ryan took over, it was basically a dumpster fire in Indianapolis. But as offensive coordinator in 2021, Carson Wentz had 27 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. So it wasn't all bad. I mean, I think if you're getting that in that year from Carson Wentz, that's nice, right? And this is, will be known for his best offense in 2021 being Jonathan Taylor's best season, right, where he broke out and had 20 touchdowns. But this is a guy whose history is as a quarterbacks coach, right? He was a quarterbacks coach, an assistant quarterbacks coach, then an offensive coordinator. So it's not as if he's just a run-heavy philosophy type of guy. Right. He must have really aced the interview process for the Chargers offensive coordinator job if they wanted to keep him involved in the passing game role potentially for this team. So I'm going to let it play out. Like I said, I'm giving Jim Harbaugh my trust to build this staff how he wants to do it. So I like the hiring, but not as much as I like the Chargers being able to retain Ryan Ficken and also bring in defensive mastermind Jesse Minter onto the staff more officially now, even though the team hasn't announced it yet. Those are two moves I could get really excited about, and we know who the new offensive line coach is, so we're going to talk about that coming up right after this. First, though, I do need to tell you guys about DoorDash because it's time to pull out your Lucky Charm jersey and order your favorite apps and snacks on DoorDash because it's football season and there's only one game left, and it's the biggest game. But DoorDash, for the biggest party, the biggest game of the year, the best part of it is it really takes some of the stress off of game day because you need to feed people, you have a potluck, any of those things, you have DoorDash because whether you need your favorite restaurant dropped off right, or the ingredients that you need if you've got the burgers but forgot the buns, if you got the chips but forgot the dips, DoorDash is there to save the day. And I might just actually have DoorDash pull up to the party that I'm going to and drop it off because that seems a lot easier than having to try to cook something. And my pregnant wife is definitely not going to do it. So DoorDash is getting a huge uptick from me right now. And you guys can save some money too. You can get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. When you download the DoorDash app and enter the code LOCKED23, subject to change, terms apply. But don't forget, you can save $10 value, 50% off up to $10 with the code LOCKED23 when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more, subject to change, terms apply. I also need to tell you guys about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home the win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, David, well, let's talk about some of the moves that we actually know happened at this point, at least according to Aaron Wilson. Like we said, the biggest thing I took away from that was that the Chargers are keeping Ryan Ficken as their special teams coordinator. What we do know is that they were talking with him. They were in talks to try to keep him. They blocked a move for him to leave, right, which was obviously a great sign. But they also did that to Kellen Moore, who the next week ended up becoming the Eagles' new offensive coordinator, right? So Ryan Ficken staying, David, as opposed to potentially bringing on, Jay Harbaugh, who was the special teams coach for Michigan, feels like a coup. It doesn't happen a lot. It's very hard to keep your job when a new regime comes in and gets full staff control, which is reportedly what Jim Harbaugh had. But what a smart move to kind of look past his biases a little bit, right? Not necessarily going out and giving his friends a cushy position as a special teams coordinator and keeping literally one of the best in the business.
Yeah, I mean, hey, no disrespect to Jay Harbaugh there. I'm sure, I'm sure he would have been great in that role, but I truly believe that Ryan Ficken earned the right to stay here. I mean, the turnaround was obvious. It was clear because the Chargers special teams unit was dreadful before he got here. He really, truly turned this unit around. It works like a well-oiled machine. I think you look across every aspect of the special teams unit, and you can see that it is not only improved, but it is now extremely effective, and it has really helped the Chargers win multiple games, whether it was drafting the right guys to bring in or whether it was signing the right guys to come in. The special teams unit has been completely overhauled, and now it is one of the top units in the NFL.
Yeah, and I never want to go back to that life, right? I never want to go back to where the Chargers are the worst at special teams every year, which is like every year they were close to it. Like we're talking about probably 10 years where they didn't have, a top 10 unit. Special teams unit at all, or even close to it, maybe even average, right? So yeah, never want to go back to that. I think that was honestly one place where Brandon Staley actually did well, was letting Ryan Ficken build that special teams unit because he turned it into a monster. Like you said, Darius Davis, already one of the best return men in the league, should have had 2 return touchdowns. Almost never flagged, and I have to say almost because Stone Smart tried to hold the punter, took away a touchdown from Darius Davis, but
didn't even need to do it.
No, not at all. Ranked second in DVOA in 2023. They ranked 6th in 2022. They were the number 1 ranked special teams unit on Pro Football Focus last year. I mean, he has been a godsend, and that feels like an understatement. I'm so glad that Ryan Ficken's sticking around, and hopefully that unit doesn't skip a beat because it was great under him. But another unit I'm very excited about is the Chargers defense, which has been dreadful and was the entire time under Brandon Staley, so no credit there. And Aaron Wilson is also reporting in that report that Jesse Minter is confirmed as the Chargers DC, even if they can't necessarily technically do it yet officially. He's saying it's happening. That's what we've expected to happen, and I think that is an awesome move to bring in maybe college football's best defensive coordinator and make him yours.
I mean, the defense last year for Michigan was spectacular. I mean, they were suffocating. They really, put a hurting on everybody. 9.5 points per game allowed, 239.7 total yards per game allowed, an 8.6% sack rate, and yards per rush allowed, 2.9. It's just unbelievable. They were one of the better defenses in the country. If not the best defense in the country. And also, this is someone that's coming from the Ravens type of defense, that style of defense. Obviously, the general manager is from the Baltimore Ravens, so there's a lot of synchronicity there to be able to kind of bring those schemes and concepts over with a general manager that knows the type of players that are going to excel in that system, with a coordinator that has been able to put together one of the better units in his profession of college football.
Yeah, exactly. I think when you're looking at Jesse Minter, this is out of 134 teams in Division I college football FBS. First in points per game, second in yards, 11th in takeaways, second in passing yards, 5th in rushing yards, top 5 unit against the run and the pass. And you've already seen it because Mike McDonald runs the same defense. He took over from Mike McDonald in 2021. After Mike McDonald did it in Michigan, he took over after, made his tweaks to it. He says this: it's built on 4 pillars: block destruction, shocking effort, ball disruption, and obnoxious communication. Jesse Minter is the real deal. Hopefully he can implement that Mike McDonald defense, that new Jesse Minter defense in Los Angeles. And like you said, Joe Ortiz has built this defense once for Mike McDonald. Now he'll have to build it again for Jesse Minter, and there's some guys that fit in better than others. But if he can get close to that, anywhere close to that, that is a huge steal for the Chargers.
Sign me up, please.
Let's get to the last addition, according to Aaron Wilson here, and that is Mike Devlin, someone we talked about last week on our fan mail show, if it was going to be him, because the reports had come out already that it was potentially going to be him. David, a very, very seasoned coach to take over this offensive line for Jim Harbaugh, and somebody who's been with the Ravens over the last couple of years, so knows exactly kind of what a Ravens/Harbaugh offense wants to do with their offensive line.
That's right. They want to run the football. They want to establish authority over the line of scrimmage. They want to dominate the man in front of them. This guy not only played in the league for 7 years, but has coached at the NFL level for 21 years. So this guy has been doing it at a high level for a very, very long time. The Baltimore Ravens led the NFL in rushing in 2023 with 2,661 rushing yards, and also led in yards on the ground per game at 156.5. So they know how to run the ball in Baltimore. They do it better than anybody in the league. So if you're wanting to steal people that from that kind of avenue of the NFL and want to excel running the football, you don't want to do it anywhere else but the Baltimore Ravens, and that's exactly what the Chargers have done.
Another thing here, a good little nugget for Mike Devlin, worked with Greg Roman, right? Because Greg Roman was the Baltimore offensive coordinator up until 2022. And that's one of the things about Roman is okay, they looked much better under Todd Monken, right? That's the other kind of thing there. But these two guys work together. So the potential to have Greg Roman in tandem with someone like Mike Devlin, two guys who have worked together before, two guys who were designing the same kind of running game and teaching this offensive line what they needed to do. That's a great fit for me, right? Those two guys fit extremely well together. And obviously he's worked with some bad offensive lines in the past, the Jets, the Cardinals, the Texans, but they didn't have a lot to work with, and he still found ways to find stars on all of those offensive lines, some really good players that made Pro Bowls and All Pros and things like that. So I'm bullish on it. I like it. I like the experience there. And I think the thing is, too, is the bar has been set incredibly low for the Chargers. That offensive line got nowhere near what their full potential was last year, at least in my opinion, right? The protections were a mess. The guys regressed. It was just not what you wanted to see. So getting a new offensive line and, probably means the exit of Brendan Nugent, I think is a new era, an exciting era for the Chargers offensive line. And I think if they can get that identity, if this offensive line can get something to hang their hat on, that goes a long way. And I think getting much better production, protecting the quarterback with the threat of a good run game, protecting the quarterback better in general, I think can happen with Mike Devlin in concert potentially with Greg Roman and what this new scheme is going to look like. But it is Monday, David, and draft season is kind of right around the corner. It's going to get here before we know it. So we're going to get into our first mock draft Monday looking at who the experts think are the Chargers' favorite for the 5th overall pick so far this year. I'll give you a spoiler alert. It's Brock Bowers, and we're here for it. So we're going to talk about that coming up right after this. First, I do need to tell you guys, though, happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And if you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win the Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored. And let's be honest, guys, there's only one football Sunday left if you want to get your bets in. You have one more chance, and this is obviously the best time of the season to bet, and the best game to bet on is the Super Bowl. So some of the ones I like so far, Chris Jones and Nick Bosa getting at least half a sack each. You can get a plus 200. George Kittle anytime touchdown, a plus 175. I like both of those. And right now, new customers, if you join today, you can get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook of the NFL. David, let's get into our first mock draft Monday of the season, looking at the Chargers mock draft tracker 2.0 and who the experts have the Chargers taking with the 5th overall pick. Because if we're talking about this team turning it around after a 5-win season, you have to get the 5th overall pick right. You can't stress it enough. When you get to pick that high, especially with some of, the Chargers' best players, Justin Herbert taken 6th, and some of the other great players they have were taken right around that area. You're not... Under Jim Harbaugh, I'm going to make a bold statement and say you're not going to have better than the 5th overall pick again during the Jim Harbaugh era, right? So you have to get it right. And the favorite so far is Brock Bowers when you're looking at this list. But I do want to tell everyone to make sure they're checking out the first ever 24/7 sports streaming show nationally, and that is Locked On Sports Today, where you're getting experts from all around the country covering only their local team, the only way that Locked On knows how to do it, giving the best coverage out there. So make sure you guys subscribe to Locked On Sports Today, getting the first ever sports national 24/7 streaming channel. David, there was 10 people that picked in the Chargers mock draft pick tracker 2.0. 6 of the 10 picked Brock Bowers to be the Chargers at 5th overall.
I mean, I can understand why. I mean, Brock Bowers is an absolute animal, and Georgia used him in a multitude of different ways. I mean, whether it was screens or handoffs to attack the seam. I mean, he was excellent as a contested catch receiver. I mean, he was really, one of the best athletes, regardless of position in college football. I mean, he was a true game changer. And the thing is the Chargers desperately need a game-changing tight end. I mean, some of the best teams in the NFL have that guy, have that security blanket, have that go-to weapon at the tight end position. And, as Charger fans, we've seen it. We've seen how effective a all-world tight end can be, as we have our very own Antonio Gates probably walking in to the Hall of Fame this year.
He better be.
We want to see that for Justin Herbert. We want to see a talent like that for Justin Herbert, because we know that it's a difference maker, and Brock Bowers is certain to be that at the next level.
It feels like it, right? I mean, the thing is it's always a risky proposition, especially at that position, right? There's so many first-round tight ends that have been a bust. And, you have most recently Kyle Pitts getting taken in the top 5 picks, which just hasn't happened very much historically in NFL history, right? And, of course, the ideal situation is you could trade back and then go get Brock Bowers, right? But if they stay there and Brock Bowers is the pick, I mean, I like it, man. I mean, I just think running the football, passing the football, he helps you in both of those areas. Yeah. He gives you some physicality. And, to me, if they go that route, it's telling me, hey, Jim Harbaugh sees Brock Bowers kind of maybe how he used Vernon Davis back in the day, right? Who had all of his best seasons under Jim Harbaugh and was an absolute animal in those 49ers offenses. So especially when you see guys like Travis Kelce and George Kittle facing off in the Super Bowl, yes, neither one of those guys were first round picks. But if you feel like you have a chance to get one of those guys, I don't think you can let, past first round picks change your mind on that. Even though it's been very hit or miss, this is a dude who's literally been setting records since he was a freshman, a true freshman, winning a national championship and being a major factor in a national championship game as like an 18, 19-year-old. So this dude is different. I like what I see from Brock Bowers. Yeah, he did. I mean, ever since then. So one thing that I also thought was interesting is at least one expert thought that Marvin Harrison Jr. was going to fall to the Chargers at the 5th overall pick. And I mean, I don't necessarily think it's going to happen, but I think, you do run up to the podium. And it's not, I guess, totally out of the, conversation that it could happen, right? It is possible technically. And if it does happen, you go up and do it.
Hey, if one of these QB needy teams feel like they need to make a move and jump up and get in front to get one of their quarterbacks and Marvin Harrison Jr. falls, then absolutely. I mean, you're walking up to the podium with a pep in your step, with a big smile, because you just got the best wide receiver in the NFL draft, at least as we see it right now. I mean, the guy is
He's the best
a true difference maker. I mean, the body control, the hands, the size, the speed, the whole combination, the lineage, the NFL lineage, it's all there for Marvin Harrison Jr. And so that would be a absolute steal and coup. And you have, your Jamar Chase to your, your Joey Burrs out there to, for Justin Herbert. He gets his new number one wide receiver. So that would be really awesome to see. Do I think it happens? Nah, I don't.
So, that was Will Helms of Pro Football Network who posted there, who had that in his first mock draft. And, hey, hopefully it goes like that, Will. I'm right there with you. But he reminds me of Justin Jefferson, at least watching him, just in the sense that, like, it's very, very hard to find a weakness to this guy's game, right? Elite route runner, great hands, can make the spectacular catch, can get separation, does all of those things. Yeah, does all those things extremely well. So I would love that, obviously. A little surprised, David, that out of these 10 mocks that we have here on this Mock Draft Tracker 2.0, that Malik Neighbors wasn't taking in any of them, right? I mean, Daniel Jeremiah had the Chargers going Rome Odunze over Malik Neighbors with the 5th overall pick, and he has said that's like kind of his guy from this draft class, and he would say love the pick for Justin Herbert, and I get it, but just interesting to see this and see that nobody has Malik Neighbors going to the Chargers, because obviously that would be a guy who's right there for us. The other interesting thing here, David, is that out of the 10 people, only one of them went defense, and it was actually Locked On's own Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football, also works for Sporting News, who had the Chargers taking Alabama edge rusher Dallas Turner. And I think the 90% offense here is where I would probably side with, David. Like, to me, I don't think there's a consensus edge rusher. There's no Bosa in this class, right? There's nobody like that where it just feels like they're a consensus top 5 pick, at least for me at this point, right? It feels like if they don't go offensive weapon, they probably go offensive line. If they stay at 5, I don't see it being anything other than an offensive player.
Yeah, I just don't know if there's a defensive player in this draft that doesn't have questions about their game. And I think if you're taking a defensive player in the top 5, the things that they need to work on need to be very, very small on the list. I mean, they got to be very, very close to a finished product, a guy that can step in and make an impact right away. And I'm not saying that there's always surprises in every single draft every single year, but it just doesn't seem at this point that there's anybody on the defensive side that's going to make that type of impact immediately.
Well, the thing is like, should the Chargers be taking an edge rusher at 5th overall? Like, I mean, to me, it feels like one of the positions they're set up best for. I mean, whether they keep Joey Bosa or Khalil Mack, pairing that person with, Tuli Tuipulotu on the other side, who was the 13th edge rusher taken in his draft class, right? Which is crazy. I don't know. Like, for a top 5 pick, like, I get it. It's going to be an issue. You want to set up for the future, but like, just looking at what this 2024 roster is going to look like, that would seem to be pretty far down the list. Yeah. You feel like there's a generational player there, right? A Will Anderson, any of the Bosas, anything like that. Yeah, I think there's, you just take it and you can make the argument it's the best player available. For me, very hard for me to imagine the 5th overall pick, there's going to be a defensive player that's there that's going to still be the best player available. So if it's not, Marvin Harrison Jr., if it's not Brock Bowers, and hopefully it's someone like Malik Neighbors, and if it's not that, and, Jim Harbaugh wants to really lean into the trenches, it's probably one of the top tackles, right? Because this is supposed to be a very strong tackle draft. So I like it. Shout out to Vinny Iyer. I understand it. He must be very, very high on Dallas Turner, which I get. But to me, it feels like unless, if they trade back, then edge rusher, maybe even defensive tackle comes into the picture a little bit, right? Cornerback definitely comes into the picture if you trade back. If they stay at 5, it feels like they're going to go offense and give Justin Herbert a weapon, at least in my opinion. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. The good news is we will be back here with you tomorrow because it is your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers. As always, we appreciate you guys. And tomorrow we'll be getting into our Chargers buy or sell and the latest news. I feel like we'll have some hirings potentially cemented by the time we talk tomorrow. And then we have GM Joe Hortiz going to be having his press conference on Tuesday. So we'll back either Tuesday night to recap that for you guys or Wednesday morning to recap that press conference. But to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. The other way you can make sure you never miss the show is going to subscribe or follow wherever you get our social media. If it's on Twitter, you can find us at Locked On LAC. You can find me at Dan Talk Sports and David Drogemeyer at Dro Talk SD. You can find us on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. We'll be doing a mailbag show at some point. You guys can also call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 and give us your 30-second Chargers question. But this thing's starting to come together a little bit. A lot to be excited about. Can't wait to be back here tomorrow with you guys for the latest news and our Chargers buy or sell. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.